All right, everybody, I am back with a brand new DC update, and there's been a lot of stuff that has been posted online over the last couple of days since my last video, and I figured I better get a video out before this thing gets too big. And then I'm going to reiterate something I mentioned in my last video, and there have been several YouTubers caught in some big lies over the last week. A couple of them, well, one of them was called out by Gunn, and I'm going to talk about something funny that I saw this morning. And we're going to talk about the state of the DCU and what I think is going to happen in the future. And I'm going to back it up with my proof. But let's take a look at these photos. So the first photo I have here is this Superman show, this Superman and Lois show. I forget the name of it. That was being developed. It was an animated show alongside the new Batman animated show. Is being picked up by Adult Swim. So this was, I can't remember if it was called Superman and Lois. No, it's not Superman and Lois. I can't remember the name of it. But this show was another one of those that got pushed to the back. People thought this stuff was canceled, but it was just being shopped around. And this one actually got picked up by Adult Swim. All right, so the next story here is the Batman 2. It is being reported by many people that Clayface is reportedly the big addition to the Batman 2, that he is going to be the main villain. And it was also announced today that the Batman 2 is going to start filming this November. So there's quite a bit coming up with that show as well. Well, not show, movie. But we're going to get, obviously before that gets released, we are going to have the Penguin TV show. And I am actually looking forward to that. What I'm most curious with the Batman franchise is the Batman going to have some growth with his character in the future, because anytime people praise this film or say it's amazing, I now respond with the same thing. I respond with, he was a slow-talking, slow-moving, knock on the front door of the Iceberg Lounge, bomb in the face surviving, wingsuit impact of death surviving Batman. And, you know, the whole car chase was completely nonsensical. If you're staring down the Batman in his Batmobile down the alleyway, why would you get in your car and drive off? He could have just, the Penguin could have just walked into the Iceberg Lounge. The movie is very flawed. He's also a very flawed character and did not act like Batman. So other than the detective part, they nailed that. But he didn't act like Batman, and so I'm hoping there's some major growth coming up for that character. The next picture here has to do with Blue Beetle, which is coming out this summer. You can see that it is going to premiere August 18th in theaters. The trailer is supposed to drop this coming Monday, April 3rd. And I will post my thoughts on the trailer when it comes out. And everybody needs to remember this was originally going to be an HBO Max exclusive, but Zaslav and company felt like it was good enough to release in theaters. We will see if that's true. I personally think it is going to tank. I don't think it's going to make money. I think it's going to have about the same reception that Shazam 2 did, but it is one of those films that is getting released this year. Right, so here's one of those stories that got one of the YouTubers in some trouble this week. It says, breaking, DC Studios is prepping materials to begin auditions for the role of Superman. And that comes from James Gunn himself. He said he has not revealed who he's going to interview with, but he is making a list. And he said no one has seen that list after my favorite YouTuber, Grace Randolph, started going off saying who it was going to be. And one of my pictures does talk about that here in a minute, so we will look at that. All right, so in my last video, this is where things are going to start ramping up for my video today. In my last video, I talked about Ben Affleck talking about coming back to play Batman beyond The Flash. And this scene involved Wonder Woman, and I did not get into what the scene was in hopes that it was actually going to be in the movie. But people are reporting, and this comes from Deadline, that the Wonder Woman cameo that Ben Affleck revealed was filmed for The Flash was reportedly cut from the film months ago. And I'm going to go back to this because I'm going to talk about why these cuts were made and what I think is going on behind the scenes. All right, so here's the other part of that Superman story. This kid was the star of Percy Jackson, which I never personally saw. His name is Logan Lerman. And Gunn, people came out and said that he was in talks, or the front runner, to play Superman. James Gunn responded and came out and said, no, that's not true, after Grace Randolph posted this information. He said, I have not talked to anybody. Nobody knows what my list is, and nobody knows what's going on. So one or the other is lying. If I had to say, and I hate to admit it, but Grace Randolph has been right more times than I'd like to admit, and James Gunn has been caught in more lies than I'd like to admit. But, Grace has also been wrong on numerous things as well. Right, so the last photo I have here, and then I'm going to talk about what's going on with the DCU, is James Gunn posted this just yesterday. This is a photo that he posted with absolutely no comments, and people tend to think that this is his, the slate of characters that he's going to be using in the upcoming DCU. We can see lots of things. You've got the Flash in there. You've got Mr. Terrific. You got the Joker. You've got Robin. You've got Batman. Now, if he makes Batman look like that, I'm all for that. I want someone like what we saw at the end of Batman versus Superman, going to see, Lex Luthor in jail. That's the kind of Batman I want to see, like the one we saw in the warehouse scene. I want a gritty, hardcore Batman. You've got Swamp Thing in there. So some of these characters have already been revealed. But what's interesting, if you look in the background, you can see Jonathan Kent. And there hasn't, we don't know if we're going to go that route with this in the DCU yet. There's Batgirl, there's Catwoman, Shazam's back there, and you got Superman kind of right there front and center. What's missing from this is there is no Lobo, but there is a Deadshot. So it's going to be interesting to see, or not Deadshot, I think that's Slade Wilson, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what I'm saying. But you got Green Arrow, Black Canary up there as well. A lot of these characters were already introduced in the DCEU, but we're going to see where this leads. You can see that Batman there is on top of Swamp Thing, which is kind of funny. Yeah, we're going to see where this all goes. So let's talk about what's going on with DC. So Gunn is back out there responding to some people like he did with Grace Randolph. But you know what he hasn't talked about or even mentioned? All the crap that Ben Affleck has been out there talking about. Ben Affleck has been in several interviews now. He did the interview for Variety, the lengthy one, and then he also did this interview with, Jason Bateman and those guys for that podcast. And he's made some comments that James Gunn has not responded to. And I'm going to talk about what this means and what I think is going on behind the scenes. And wouldn't it be awesome if you could find a YouTuber that is not going to sway on his views or what he believes is happening? I noticed with my last video that there are some other YouTubers now picking up on some of the information that I mentioned in there. One of those being War Stew, for those who don't know who he is. I used to watch his videos quite a bit. He's one of those guys where I was watching saying I could do better than that. Like I could bring more real information and not try to mislead people. But he had a video last week that I watched where he said, the DCEU is dead. It's gone. People need to move on, that it's never going to be revived. But yet he's out there posting on Twitter today that he's pretty much sure that Henry Cavill is not 100% done with Superman and that the Snyderverse could be restored. Kind of interesting, isn't it? So let's talk about this. Here's the evidence and what we knew or what we know was going to happen prior to Gunn taking over. Ben Affleck did shoot a new Batman scene for Aquaman 2. We knew that Gal Gadot was going to be in the Flash film. We knew that all of them were going to be at the end of the Flash movie. These were all the individuals that were coming back. They were back. There's no question about it. Ben Affleck has been in many interviews where he talked about how great it was to work for Zack Snyder, coming back for Zack Snyder's Justice League. He detailed some of that in that Variety interview. And he obviously had a great time on The Flash. He talked about that. And he was actually willing to come back for more roles, more appearances as Batman. Like he was going to be back as the DCEU Batman. Superman was also back. Henry Cavill was back, okay? No matter what anybody says that he didn't have a contract, he might not have had a contract, but Warner Brothers Discovery did have him share his post. They promoted him that weekend that Black Adam came out, they had him all over the place. He was plastered everywhere. So there was no question he was also back as Superman. We had our Trinity back. We had these characters back. And then they hired James Gunn. And James Gunn comes in and just lays waste to everything. First thing we hear is Henry Cavill's out. We hear from Ben Affleck, saying he finally broke his silence after James Gunn said that he had met with him, wanted him to direct. They wanted to find a project for him to direct, and obviously that wasn't true. Ben Affleck came out and said that's not true. He goes, I will not direct anything for the DCU. He doesn't want to go anywhere near the stuff that James Gunn is doing. So then we have this SnyderCon announced, all right? And this goes back to what I talked about in my last video. And Zack Snyder specifically name-dropped Pam Abdy and Mike DeLuca. Says it's great to work with these individuals down at Warner Brothers. It's a whole different group of people. They're warm and inviting. They're the ones that are hosting this SnyderCon. And here's what happened. I can tell you that this is what's going on behind the scenes. The reason all of those cameos got cut is James Gunn wants nothing to do with the DCEU at all. He wants his own thing, period. He's going to show his nepotism. He's going to keep his wife in there, aspects of Peacemaker. But as far as everything else goes, he wants it gone. He doesn't want anything to do with it. Now, because The Flash is reportedly erasing everything, there was no reason not to have these cameos still in the movies. If they're going through and changing it all, there was no harm in keeping those in there to let the fans see these characters again on the screen together. But he didn't want that. He didn't want that. He wanted it all erased. On the other hand, who greenlit these cameos and everything? It was Pam Abdy and Mike DeLuca. So these guys definitely feel, I believe, slighted at this stage. And so what they're going to do is they're trying to show that the Snyderverse has a lot of steam left in it by putting on this event. And it could be that David Zaslav is putting this out there as a litmus test as well. And that SnyderCon sold out within 3 minutes. So there are definitely two factions within Warner Brothers that are fighting against each other. So my last video was very, very much true, and I stand by what I said. I study this stuff day in and day out. I watch what's happening, and I believe that this is what is happening behind the scenes. I want the Snyderverse to be restored. I'm not going to waver in my position in that. No matter how many people come in and tell me it's dead, move on, this, that, yeah, blah, blah. There's so many people that come in and make nasty comments. And there was somebody that came in and started calling a lot of people, liars in my comments last week, and I had to go in and delete that person is no longer welcome on my channel. You're not going to come in and start being derogatory towards everybody on my channel and think you're going to stick around. It's not going to happen. So know that I've got everybody's back. I'm not going to let people come in and just berate us because of our views. And I do believe we're going to see a finish to this story. I do believe Zack Snyder is going to announce something next week or next month. I'm hoping that's what's going to happen. It's not guaranteed 100%. But I'm not lying to you guys, leading you on as it's a definitive thing where other people will come in and tell you, this is definitely happening. This is definitely happening. I just lay out the facts and show you guys the proof, and you guys can all see it with your own eyes. All right, so what do you guys think about today's video? What do you think is going to happen next month? I do appreciate the support. We'll see you on the next video.